Good morning, good morning, good morning, everybody. Good morning, Facebook fam. It's your girl, Neo Soul recording artist Lahla-Hadiya, back again for an amazing 30-minute session with my beautiful 70-year-old mother with morning tea with mommy. Yesterday was a very interesting, very touchy, a very deep topic. We talked about All Lives Matter versus Black Lives Matter. And we had some very interesting views. And so I am awaiting the views of mainly our parents today, but awaiting the views of our Facebookers as we tackle the topic to spank or not to spank, and if so, what age is too old. So I'm gonna go ahead and get my mom on here so we can get this conversation going so that we can fit it all in our 30-minute session. And let me see. There she is. Hey, mommy.
Hello, good morning, good morning, good morning. How is everyone? Hey, y'all. How's everybody today? It's
So
a
to
beautiful day in my neighborhood.
well, it's a little gloomy out, but I'm hopeful that it'll be another beautiful day. And even if it stays raining, it'll still be beautiful because we have breath. Um,
Liquid sunshine. That's all it is. Liquid sunshine.
yes, and it's cleaning up all the mess and pollution and stuff. So I
That's
was
right.
telling our
That's right.
Facebookers, while we wait for some more to get on, that we are discussing the topic today, which I can't wait. Hey, V, Van Sean said good morning.
Hey, V.
So, Goddaddy, I can't wait to hear your views since we have one of your godchildren in the Castro household. But today's topic is to spank or not to spank, and what age is too old. You notice how I use the politically correct word spank. But to all my down home southern Baptist families, you know what I mean. But to spank or not to spank, and what age is too old. So I'm gonna start because I know my mom is gonna have a lot to say about this, and then I'm gonna chime in because I think it's gonna be so much different when she talks about the grandkids. But so I'm gonna preface with I turned out all right, and I think I can probably count on one. I'm lying. About two hands, no hands left over, no fingers left over, no thumbs. Of how many times I actually got a spanking, got a whipping, whatever you want to call it. And each time I remember distinctly my mom or my dad saying, "This is gonna hurt me more than it hurts you." Now I didn't see that at all because it definitely felt like it was hurting me more. Um, but I do believe that now that I'm older, now that I'm mature now, and I'm a mother myself, I feel like um, that it was necessary. It was necessary for me to grow into the woman that I am, grow into the godly woman that I am, and be the parent that I am. It definitely set some boundaries for structure and control. It taught me self control and how to present myself. How to be a certain way in the household and for society. Van said his last whipping he got was in fourth grade. I don't know what happened to your camera, mommy. You went sideways.
Yeah, something happened here.
But so with with my children, I probably can. It's not often. It's not. It's far and few in between, and that I've had to spank my kids. Um, for the most part, I can communicate verbally to them. We've never really had a timeout, so to speak. Um, but my voice changes, my facial expression changes, and they know that mommy means business. So it's not often that I have to spank them. Now I do recall a time where my oldest daughter, I did spank her, and I spanked her good. Um, Reason being, I needed her at that time. She was a young toddler, and I needed her to understand the difference between um, don't touch this because mommy doesn't want you to have that, and don't touch this. This could mean life or death. And so she remembers, and I think a lot of the people who were close to us remember for a long time. Layla, I'm gonna shout her out. um, she would walk like the socket would be right here. She would take a beeline and walk all the way around because one day she was walking past the socket and she touched it, and I had to tear her butt up because there was no coming back from the consequence of something happening, her sticking her finger in or another object. So it was different than me saying, no, mommy said don't eat that cookie. It was so much different. So I needed her to understand the seriousness of it. And because of that, I know somebody on here is going to be like, well, she was traumatized. Whatever the case may be, she never touched the socket again. So it worked in my household, and it is something that I have adopted. Now, I will say, um, I grew up in a Christian home, and we grew up under the proverb verse of spare the rod, spoil the child. And so for me, I don't always feel like the rod is a belt, a hand, or something physical. Uh, but I do believe that there should be some form of control to get your child back in line or keep them in line or develop a boundary for them. So I'm gonna let Mama Lou chime in
Well,
because I can't wait to hear what she gotta say.
I'm going to surprise you. It sounds like I trained you well because everything you've said
Hey
pretty much,
Lou, Lieutenant Hayes says spankings are very necessary.
everything you said pretty much taps into what I would say. Certainly train up a child in the ways to go, and when he's old, he will not depart. It does not mean that he won't uh,
Hey, Meaty.
mess do wrong, go astray. But the idea is when the seed is planted, um, the plant will grow. That child will come back to what has been taught and trained. And the rod is not necessarily, and that's the part that really got me. It's confirmation because that was my thinking also, that the rod is not necessarily a belt, a switch,
Hold up. So
a
I was
tree.
getting whippings for nothing. It's like,
It's
stop playing.
not necessarily those things. It could be, but it's not necessarily
What's
just
that,
that.
baby?
Uh, the rod could be a staff. It could be a look. Um, my dad, example being, my dad could look at us. There were three of us, and I was the youngest. He could look at us from across the church. I mean, we had a huge church when I was growing up, our church building, and all it took was that look.
Mm-hmm.
Mom, the same thing. Each of them had a different facial expression to correct us. I can count on one hand the times that I was spanked, and
I think
I
you
don't.
were spoiled. You freezing up on me, mommy. What's going on? Look, that must have been like far from the truth. It's like, nah, let me stop playing. While we wait for her to unfreeze. Um, hey, baby, you definitely needed spankings in your life growing up. I'm gonna have to talk to Dewan and Taro. What's going on, meaty? So, like, I agree with what she was saying as far as let me see. Angela Johnson. Let me read this real quick. Some black people have taken spanking too far. This carries over from the slave plantation, how the white man would whip the slaves to put fear in the slaves and control them. So I have a comment to that, and um I'm gonna wait until Mama Lou comes back to um to address that, so that she can chime in as well. So I'm gonna try to get her back on here real quick. Um, but in regards to my children, like my mom was saying, sometimes all it take is just that look. And again, like I was saying in the beginning, the rod to me is not necessarily it's not always hitting your child. Um, there you go. Yeah, you froze. I'm gonna bring you back on. Just I'm gonna bring you. Yeah, I'm gonna bring you back on. You come on in a second. Wait for your picture to pop up. But there's a comment that was put on here when you disconnected that I want to read, and I want to get your take on it. I was just stalling out for a minute until you came back, but um, I I truly believe that the rod to me and in my household, and it won't change. There's nothing y'all can write on here that's gonna change it. To me in my household, it is um, to an extent, to a large extent, a form of control. Um, in my house, mommy and daddy do maintain control. Like we do have the control in the house, and we will hold on to that and maintain it. And so, in order to do that, sometimes the rod, a form of control, disciplinary actions are necessary, um, so that our children follow suit and they fall in line with what we are teaching them, what we are raising them to become. Um, that is essential in the Castro household. My husband's on here talking about Papa. Yeah. So my husband's half Puerto Rican. So like my babies know, even down to, the 18-month-old. He's like, you want Papa? And she'll sit right on down. Like, so like they know, like it's certain thing. And I believe that if you don't have that, um, then you run the risk of your children gaining the control in the household, and um, sometimes in some cases ending up here she is, I'm gonna bring her back on, ending up in a bad situation as they get older and as they become adults. So as a toddler, I can speak to my child. I've spoken to my children even in the belly. However, there are certain actions that I have to do when they don't really understand language yet. So I can't say no. You weren't supposed to grab that because such and such and such. Now, as you get older and you can understand my language, maybe yes, but at that point, yeah, no, we not going to sit there and try to communicate with words. I may do it while I'm spanking you. Um, and why I think if my lieutenant is still on here, I'm a former police officer, and um, when when you're with your partner tell you to duck, you don't have time to ask questions why. That could mean life or death. So I adopt that in my way of thinking when I'm dealing with my children. Sometimes I don't have time to explain why you're not supposed to touch that. It's like, yo, move your hands, because I can see that if you push that one more time, that glass vase is gonna fall and bust you right upside your head. So like it's certain. I think there should be careful thought, and like Scripture says, you should be careful to discipline your children, which means there should be some type of thought process while you're disciplining your children or before you enter into that disciplinary action with your children. Mommy, I'm gonna read this statement real quick. So Angela says some black people have taken spanking too far. This carries over from the slave plantation, how the white man would whip the slaves to put fear in the slaves and control them. I'm gonna let you take that one.
I don't think we can I don't think we can emphasize enough what the Bible says, and that is to train up a child in the way he is to go. He or she Um, Also, we speak of that rod, and that rod is not necessarily a switch. And I said this earlier, it's not necessarily a switch, it's not necessarily a branch, a belt, or what have you. That rod indicates control, such as Moses had with the rod back
That's
in
it right
biblical
there.
times with Pharaoh.
Yeah.
Um, I am a stickler for the training part. When you train anything, you're guiding it. You're guiding it by example. You're guiding it uh, in the way it's to go, and that is what makes it so important for parents, adults, to model, to be the example for children. Yes, certainly, as the generations have come forth, things have changed. Attitudes have changed. I remember back when I was carrying my first child, the doctor book, on you know uh, doing things. You talk to your children. Yes, you do talk to your children,
I talk to him.
and you talk to them as they are able to understand.
Mm-hmm.
You're building communication. You're building language every time you open your mouth to your children. I don't think we've ever talked baby talk to our children, our babies, and yeah, I know I didn't.
Yeah,
And
don't do
that's
that.
how our children are able to develop the language, the communication skills. Um, and I am a stickler for the fact that as you're modeling for your children, as your children are looking at you, instead of do as I say and not as I do, I
Mm-hmm.
find that that is the big, big, big problem with a lot of households today, because parents are saying one thing and doing
And doing
another,
another.
saying one thing and showing another.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if and I related to a plant. You can train and you can train a plant. If you put it in the direction of the sun, it's going to grow towards the sun. Okay. So same line of thinking. If you put a child in the direction of the sun, SON, he or she will grow in the direction of the sun. And yes, the other thing we touched on this on yesterday is um, learning styles are different for each and every child.
Yeah.
No two children are alike. One size does not fit all. So, in training your children, you as the parent um, have to know your children. You have to know how to talk to each of your children, And yes, sometimes it does get their attention quicker when you elevate your voice, or, you pull out the rod.
Yeah.
However, the idea is to train them the way they should go. I really
let's
believe.
let's stop on that word training, because growing up in my earlier adult years, I used to hear a lot of adults say, "My child ain't no dog. My child ain't no animal." And I think it just sounded good to them, because when you think of training in anything, whether it's training for a profession, whether it's uh, physical training, um, there's no choice. The way I look at it, there's no choice. So I show you this path that gets you to this result, right? And then I may show you things that you could do that don't coincide with the path. But when you enter into training, there's no choice. Like if you are in physical training and you're trying to tame your tummy, and your trainer says we're going to do these crunch in order to get the result that you're looking for. I've tested for your body fat, and this is how long it's going to take based on my level of expertise. So we're going to do 50 crunches a day. We're going to do 120 push-ups. a day. You know, you got to work your legs too, because when your stomach starts going down, you don't want your legs to be flabby. Like, there is a regimen. And so when you enter into that training, there's no choice. Like, if you want that result, if you want that result, not a partial result, if you want that result, you have to follow the path, which that's the training portion. There's no choice. Like, when you're training up a child, yes, it is like someone would train an animal. There's no choice. If I want my animal to sit, right? If I'm training my dog to sit, I may give a treat at the end, but that's the end result. So when I say sit, I mean sit your butt on that ground. Like, and so there is no scooting. Like, we have a dog. There is no scooting. You know, we so don't laugh because it's real. We pray with our animals before they eat. Our dog, he will sit there through the entire prayer, and the food is right in front of his face, and he knows not to touch it. We've been doing this since he was a puppy, right? A child. So when he gets older, so much so, if my sons go out and they fill his bowl and he's outside, he'll still be sitting there. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you didn't pray with him. That's the form of training that I am implementing in my household, that my husband and I are implementing in my household, even with our children. It's, I'm going to give you this path that you're going to follow. You have no choice. These are the rules that you follow. And outside of the rules, there are consequences, which may be a spanking, which may be punishment, which may be me taking something from you, which may be you sitting and listening to a long lecture from me. They don't like to do because I talk a lot. But anything outside of this training manual, there are consequences. The outcome is I have respectful children when they walk out of this house, and I don't always have to be next to them. And I'll get phone calls, I'll get text messages, and so does my husband, about my children's behavior and how they are in society without us. That's effective training. That's training is necessary. Whether you see it as I don't know, barbaric is the right word, but you know, I train my dog, I don't train my kid. I absolutely train my children. They absolutely have a form of control that is over them, that is heading their life, so that they follow the path that they're supposed to. Because it's just like when you're doing physical training. If you do anything outside of what your trainer doing, come on, come on, come on, let's go. You know, they're getting you back on track, putting you back in under control so that you can reach that goal. So, to me, training is necessary. It is a real word in our house. Spankings are necessary. They are, that is a real thing in the Castro house. It doesn't happen often because I feel like as they grow and as they mature, and the more they watch mommy and daddy, then they see how they're supposed to act. And I don't have to, or dad doesn't always have to, put down that form of control, lay down that rod, because they're modeling after us. And that's the key right there. That's the key in training your child and in minimizing that rod, whatever that rod represents for you, is how are you operating? How do you live your life? What do they see when they see you? Like, you can't, drink and be, loud and obnoxious in front of your children and then expect that you're going to train them not to ever take a drink, not to ever sip a taste of alcohol. You can't do that because they're watching you. Like, training is also not just verbal, but what they see. Again, I go back to the police department. I had the biggest respect for one of the officers who used to train us when we did our PT. We called him Ro. Ro would get down and do everything he made us do. Like, he would be screaming and yelling like, y'all gonna get down and do these push-ups. But I look over and he's doing the push-ups. Like, the dude trained 5 classes back to back. And every class said the same thing about him. Like, he would never tell you to do, instruct you to do, command you to do something that he wasn't willing to do. And so, as parents, a part of training is you modeling what it is that you want them to follow after. And so, if you're not modeling that, then yes, your training sessions are going to be difficult with the people that you have under your reign. Yes, I said reign under your reign because it's confusing. You're asking them or you're telling them and commanding them to do one thing and disciplining them for it, but they see something totally different. I keep 5 brooms. Madisha, I hope I'm saying it right. I keep 5 brooms for my grandchild's handy. I just do not play that. Fear of the heart is fear of the Lord. All in love. My mother is 96 and I still feel that broom near my feet, near my heart and feet. Love you both. Tell the truth and keep it real for our babies. Old school works all the time. That's it. Meaty said exactly like kids calling adults by first names. Oh no, they don't do that. Mine will never use adults' first names. Sir, ma'am, or Mrs. or Miss. Close friends are auntie and uncle. Jerome says spank. I'll let you chime in, Mom. I knew that them good Southern raised Baptist children turned adults was going to put spank on here, but
The interesting thing is, in the training, uh, my daughter uh, sometimes think that I am more lenient, and I am, on my grandchildren than I was with she and her brother. And in a sense, I am, but you have to really take a microscope and look at what's happening here. Because I put the training, I put the work in. Keyword: I put the work uh, in training my kids, my husband and I, dad and I, and dad and I. Speaking of that, my we were a balance. You know, he was the bad cop, I was the good cop, and it doesn't make either one a bad thing. Bad cop
they
or
switched
good
up
cop.
roles a couple
Okay.
times.
Now and there were times when we switched up. Okay, and that's okay too. But the balance is what makes it work, because whereas we both came together in terms of the rules. I never went against my husband when it came to decisions that were made. And that sometimes, as my kids got older, sort of posed a problem with them, with the kids, because they were like, why can't you just make a decision? Well, no, it's a balance. We talk it over. We decide what's in the best interest of our children. And because I put in the work in training my children, that is the main reason I don't intervene when it comes to the discipline part of my grandchildren. And I jokingly but seriously said to my daughter at times when she said, "You mean you didn't hit him? You didn't spank him?" I said, "No, because I'll hurt him I'll hurt them if I ever start to spanking. It'll just bring flashbacks to no." But seriously, I believe, because I put in the work with my daughter, that she and her husband are going to do what's right for the kids. Now, let me tell you, the other variable here is our kids now, as the generations progress before us, have a lot of outside
Yeah,
influences. And what's happening is, because most parents nowadays, whether it's a single parent home or both parents or the parents and the parents have less influence than these outside influences. Why? Because the outside influences are spending more time, or the kids are spending more time listening to the outside influences. As children mature into adolescence, their peers' opinions mean more to them than the parents. Let's face it. And also now, because they have technology, all kinds of social media. And if that part is not controlled, now that's the part where I really um, hold the rod up, because there has to be, there must be some control when it comes to children's outside influences. In
Well,
other words, remember
I
I
wouldn't just
mentioned,
say peers, mom, because I've been in situations as an adult and as a parent where, and even it happens in church, and people know, like, when it comes to the Castros, like, just don't get involved. Um, but there have been times when we're at church and when the kids were growing up, they were smaller than what they are now. Someone would give them something. They would be handing them some candy, and I'd be like, "Put it back." No, they're okay. No, they're not okay. Put it back. It, and I think it was innocently done. I don't think people maliciously do it, and I still respect my elders, but um, it really bothered me because it's like I'm training, like, and my mom can tell you there was a certain point where I did not allow anybody to discipline my children. Nobody. Like, if they did something, you bring them straight to me. You bring them straight to daddy. Nobody was disciplining my kids. And the reason why I did that was because when they were younger, my husband and I are recording artists. My husband's a musician. I'm an artist and I'm a singer, and we run a studio. They see so many people on a daily. We have a professional real live studio in our basement, and people are always coming and going because it's a business, and so they see a lot of people around us, and I felt like it was necessary for me to hone in on the fact that only mommy and daddy give you direction, because I didn't want it to ever be a situation where somebody that they may have seen tells them to do something, but we're not necessarily in the same camp. Like, they're not in our inner circle. So there was a time when they were much smaller that we did not allow any other um, discipline to come from anybody else but us. And then as they got older and they understood, oh, that's Uncle T, and oh, that's grandma, or that, then we started to introduce, and they understood, like, this is my village. Like, we were introducing their village to them slowly. And so that was something that I had learned, because growing up, my mom was like, even though we went to grandma's house and hung out in the summer, like, it was, what did mommy say? And so that was something that I had adopted and developed because of my upbringing and because of seeing how my mother raised us. So even in that form of discipline and those outside influences, like, that should not, like, when you're training your child, you have to minimize the outside influences. And even if they see it, because it's almost like walking down a hallway with glass walls, even though they see it, they know that this voice is what you listen for. Same thing when we're dealing with God. Like, in life, we see so many distractions, right? But you have to recognize, that's why you have to be in a relationship with God, because you have to be able to recognize when it's him. You have to be able to recognize when God is like, don't move, when God is like, I need you to leave that situation, when God is like, I need you to pick up that, when God is like, yes, I need you to talk to that person. When you get to that corner of life, you're going to talk to that person right there, and they're going to lead you into another direction where you're going to make a turn. Like, you have to be able to recognize the voice of your parent. And so I am a stickler for that. Like, everybody laughs, but I go by the whole adopted uh, um, mother role of a zebra. So when zebras are born, the mother takes the baby zebra and they go off away from the pack for away from the herd for about 30 days. And so if you didn't know, so in the middle of your head, zebras, that's where their fingerprint is. So you can take our fingerprint on your hand, that's their handprint basically. So when you look at a zebra, they all pretty much look the same, but if you get closer, if you dare, they all have a different swirl right there. And so the mother zebra takes the baby zebra off so that they can study that, so that when they get back to the herd, they know their mother. Like, that's what I do with my kids. Like, literally, when they're born, it's just me and them. And then we incorporate daddy, and then we incorporate the rest of the children, and then the rest of the world, or like extended family and the rest of the world. Because I need, for when I say no, no, that baby knows that's mommy saying no, and not um, Auntie JoJo saying no. So even though distractions can be seen, you have to maintain some type of control so that they know not to follow the distraction or not to listen to the distraction. And you have to be distinct in your identity with them, so that they know when they're out, they can hear in the back of their head their mommy saying, yeah, you're not supposed to do that. They can hear their dad saying, no, tell him you good and let them go on by. Like, they need to be able to still hear that voice. And so you have to model what it is that you're trying to instill in your child for yourself, so that they can see it and they can study it and know the difference when, like my mom said, the distractions come, because they're gonna come. You can't stop the distractions. Like, you can't control nobody else's kid. I tell my kids all the time, like, I don't care about nobody else's kid. I can't control what they do, what they're allowed to do, but what you won't do is such and such. So, like, you can't control the distractions.
However, and I'm really interested in hearing from our parents in the audience. Um, there are key things that we must consider as a part of that training. One of the things, the ills that teachers, educators are suffering nowadays, is the fact that the children come to the classroom with so many mixed ideals about, things. And so one of the major factors of training before the child even leaves his or her household, is respect. Respect. And I'm a God-fearing person. My daughter is as well. My family is. I am a stickler for the parents or people who have problems with that word training. Then so be it. That's your choice. But as for me and my house, I choose to follow what God has set, my creator has set out for me, you know, and that's why we are to study to show ourselves approved unto God, that we won't be ashamed to rightly divide the word of truth. And the same with parents, as we're training under those guises, we can, when you train and lay the foundation for your children, respect. I respect adults, and you teach them by example what respect is, how you talk to your elders. And it does not say that the elders are going to always be 100% right or right at all, but it does say that there are certain things you do. You respect people, and we our topic yesterday about Black Lives Matter versus uh, lives, all lives matter. And so a big part of that is intertwined with this thing of spanking. And like I said, uh, you do better when you know better.
Yeah.
When you know better, you do better. And therefore, as we're training our children, it is so important. It is so important to train them with respect. They respect their toys. They respect books. They respect um, each other. They respect the adults. They respect themselves. And that was key in my household, in our household, where, if you respect yourself, we talked this yesterday also about loving yourself. When you respect yourself, when you love yourself, then chances are you're going to respect others. Whether it's your mate, whether it's your sibling, whether it's whomever, your teacher. professor, whomever, um, as you respect God. Okay. So spanking, and as I said, as we matriculate through the generations and children are influenced, and that's the major challenge nowadays, is the fact that children are introduced to so many outside influences because they spend more time. And I used to tell my school kids this. In 40 years, I told them, I'm with you more than your parents are, for longer hours than your parents are, because chances are, you sleep at home, you get up, maybe breakfast, and chances are, because of the work schedules of parents, they're not able to spend as much time with their children as they would want to. And it's one that we could all suffer to learn from, is how to training children in the way they should go. And that word, I think, it would behoove us to really know what we mean by training, know what we mean by um, just having children, to when you train it from the very beginning, then chances are, as they're growing older, they're going to grow into those trainings. And that rod would be not as necessary as people would think it would be. I can count myself the times that my parents had to use the rod. Now, my mom, she would go crazy in a heartbeat. She would broomstick, whatever. But my dad, but you know what? My last rod that was used on me was my dad's backhand. And I was a teenager. And you know why that was? Is because I came out of my mouth. I thought I was grown. And I used a word that I heard my peers use, and we didn't have social media, so I couldn't blame it on social media. But I used this word, and I had the audacity to be sitting in the front seat of the car with my dad. And yes, I did see stars. Today, that would be considered abuse, but I tell you what, I never did it again. And I respect, in terms of the way children talk to their parents, the way they talk to adults. Again, parents have to take the responsibility in the training to model, to be the example for your children. Okay, because what's happening now is children too young, at a young age, are being exposed to too much too soon. I feel a song coming
I
out with that.
agree.
But I really believe that.
See, man, we need more than 30 minutes. This is
Yes, we
crazy.
do.
It gets too deep. I really think this one, like yesterday, I thought we were going to do a part two to that one, but this one, with the era that we're in now, I really
Yes.
think that we need to table this and bring it back again tomorrow,
Yeah.
because I still do want to get to the dot and what age is too old, because I'm interested in hearing your thoughts on that. I'm gonna
Mhm.
read this one last comment and we're gonna wrap up, because we have another call to get to.
Yeah, we have
But you guys gotta get
information.
up early, man. It starts at 7:30. Set your alarm clocks so y'all can get on here and chime in. Usually by 10 o'clock, the night before, I'll post the topic that we're going to be discussing. So you guys
So
gotta check that out the night
everybody
before.
will
Get
be
your
so
notes and everything, and get on here at 7:30 so that we can go ahead and hash it out in 30 minutes. So we're not talking so much. It's backwards, mommy. So Angelique Williams said, "Hey, cuz," she said, "the importance of training cannot be overstated. Scripture says, 'Whom He loves, He chastens.' So I will continue to do that, and I live as an example for not just my kids and grands, but others who are watching. Exactly. It is
absolutely.
important to be a demonstration. I agree. Like our children's friends, their parents will willingly say, we only let them come over to the Castro house because we see the outcome of your training, of how you discipline your children. So they, their friends don't even get to go over other people's houses except ours. Um, Mardisha said, I hope I'm saying your name right, Queen. In my environment, under over my roof, if I cannot help train whatever in any case, come get them. A ironing cord. Tough love, 2020 forever, 24/7, never too old. I hear you, girl. Well, we gonna go ahead and table this because we have to get to our prayer call with our pastor.
Yes. Oh,
We
it's been a
already
joy.
over. So
Love you
we're gonna
guys.
go ahead and bring this back tomorrow, 7:30. 7:30 be in the building virtually so that we can keep talking about this. Um, and the topic is
Thank
to
you.
spank or not to spank, and what age is too old. So again, it's always a pleasure to be able to like hang out with my mom and have morning tea, and to have morning tea with my Facebookers. So you gonna say bye, mommy?
Guys,
So
I love you guys. I love you in the Lord, and I want you to stay safe and continue to be hopeful. See you on tomorrow. Early.
early, 7:30.
7:30.
7:30. Again, it's your girl, Neo Soul recording artist Lahla-Hadiya, and I have been on all morning having morning tea with mommy. Check us out tomorrow morning, 7:30. Don't be late. Love you guys.
Love you.
Good morning, Facebook family. It's your girl, Neo Soul recording artist Lahla-Hadiya in the building. Hope you guys are up bright and early with me. Again, this is another episode of Morning Tea with Mommy, where I get to talk candidly with my 70-year-old mom about topics ranging from religion, relationships, parenting, and politics. So I'm gonna go ahead and bring her on. Today we are going to continue one of the topics that we started yesterday, which was to spank or not to spank, and what age is too old. It got a little hot and heavy yesterday, and it was so much that we wanted to say, so much we wanted to hear from you all. So we decided to do a part two, and I'm gonna bring her on. Hey, morning, mommy.
Good morning. Good morning.
So
Good morning. How's everybody?
I was just telling our
I'm
Facebookers
hoping
that
that everyone's fine.
we were going to continue with the topic that we were talking about on yesterday. Um, it was a little deep and interesting, especially coming from those who are actual parents and those who are parents of multiple um, children. I got some private messages yesterday after our segment with comments and excitement about what we were talking about, especially given the whole pandemic situation when everybody's home, or mostly everybody's home with their children. So I wanted to jump right back in with you, Mom, and hear from you in regards to we never got to what age is too old. I think we all agreed upon the whole spare the rod, spoil the child, and Spankings do go down in the Castro house if necessary. But I wanted to get your take on what age is too old. You, mommy.
I'm ha- I'm having difficulty hearing. The sound is not coming through. I can hear you, but it's scratchy. Could you
So
repeat that?
I wanted to know your take on what age is too old when we speak in terms of to spank or not to spank. What age do you think should be the cutoff um, with the whole spanking piece?
Well, I'll give you the OG, and then I'll give you I'll give you the OG, and then I'll give you what I actually think OG was, I don't care if you get as tall as the trees outside. I will stand in a chair and still give you the one, two, three. I believe, again, this goes back to what we were saying on yesterday about training. If you train a child the way he is to go according to uh, biblical teachings, according to God, then ideally when that child is older, you'll do less talking and certainly less and no spanking. Okay, because you would have instilled in that child as a person as they're growing, they will retain those things, those values, um, and things that you put into them. And ideally, there'll be less talking. My children, as they were growing older, I most times did less and less talking, less and less scolding, because they knew already the what was expected. They knew already. Um, but as with grown ups, we hear a lot, but we listen less. Most people hear, but they don't listen. And I had this discussion actually with a very close friend on yesterday evening about the difference between hearing and listening. Okay. But ideally, uh, there are no set rules, but the main point here, seriously speaking, is to instill in your children early on so that as they're growing, as they're maturing, they can articulate what's right, what's wrong, and what should happen.
Your
I want to
son
hear. I
is
really
on
want to
here.
hear our listening audience.
My husband is on here acting crazy. He said, "Good morning, mommy. It's your favorite son." We already know that's not you. He didn't get enough spankings. I'm gonna have to talk to somebody. And I'm curious to hear his take on a serious note, baby. His take on to spank or not to spank, even though we live in the same house. But what age is too old? And while we're waiting for that, I do have what's up, Nat? It's it's Van sis, my sis. She says my son is 15 now, and he doesn't get whipped anymore. But I will go to the body if I need to, and that won't change. So that brings me to another point because for those for those moms who step in and also exercise disciplinary actions when you're dealing with your sons and they do get to a point where um, the whipping or at that point is not even spanking, and they're towering over you. Um, how do you like? What is your rod? Because yesterday we talked about the rod not necessarily being um, you physically chastising your child. It could be it was basically a form of control to maintain the control to bring back the control factor so they can get back on track. Um, so for those of us, like I said yesterday, those Southern Baptist households who believe that the rod is a spanking, you get your butt whooped. Um, those moms who they're placed in a position where they have to chastise their sons physically, and they're about the same size as them, if not taller. Uh, is there a belt involved, or that's laid to the side and we just going straight? Because the reason why I want to ask that question, elaborate on that, is because some would argue the point that that is contribution to in the black community, are black men growing up aggressive and being aggressive towards other women, or being aggressive, period, towards men, because we exercise that type of tactic when it comes to discipline. I had a young lady yesterday, a Queen Angela, who stated that she felt like it was um, sort of like going backwards, and kind of adopted from the plantations when the white people used to beat their slaves. And so you do have people who feel like it's sort of like barbaric. And so I guess my question is, do you feel like if you're that parent who um, is chastising your child physically, do you feel like that lends contribution to their behavior in society as they get older, um, how they treat women, and even how they treat their fellow man, because of the aggression of getting a whipping or getting taken to the body as a child. There was, and while I'm waiting for let me see. My husband said I feel 14 is too old to use a belt, but if you have to put them down, you do what's necessary to let them know that they will respect you. So, and that's coming from a guy. I remember my dad having to lay one of my brothers out, um, because they approached him as if they were going to be the one in control, and they woke up on the floor. Um, I also remember getting up off the floor because I felt like I could take my dad. So and I was a teenager. I was a teenager, so I was probably too big, I think, looking back on it, to um, have a scheduled butt whooping. Um, and so it was something that had to be taken care of like right then and there. Um, and now, as a mom, as a parent myself, um, with two sons, one of my sons being my size, um, yeah, I probably wouldn't grab for that belt, because at that point, grabbing for the belt, I don't know. To me, grabbing for the belt would be like, yo, I'm about to beat you, and it's not about like we out in the street. It's about the form of respect. So at that moment, um, whatever that rod becomes at that moment of me regaining back control, because I'm a disciplinary in the house. It may be that backhand. It may be me yoking you up, just to get you back, because you done blacked out. Even with my daughter, my dad had a thing that I think, mommy, you're bleeding back to my mic. My dad had a thing where he didn't want um my mom to put her hands on our face, the girls, and so I've adopted that too. I'm not smacking my daughters out. This isn't no way for me to uh, relive my childhood and think I'm out on the street fighting some chick. It's not that at all. Um, so it's not about me battling like we growing up together. We're not equal at this point. So I recognize that they are the weaker of the two. I don't care how big they are; they are the weaker of the two. So even in my tactic and maneuvers, um, I'm not going at them as if we're peers. It's strictly a parent saying, "Hey, like, who you talking to?" And sometimes it only takes that. Like, in my household, one of my girls has a habit that she's trying to break, that we gonna break, with her tone when she responds. And so a lot of times it only takes I'm sorry, who you talking to? And she'll snap right back. and she's now old enough where I don't have to spank her for this. Now it's you can understand the English language, and so we have communication on respect and how that goes about and how that looks in our household. So um, I don't know when they get to be my size. I guess it depends on the situation and whether we actually go into the body. My sons, um, they would probably want me to go to the body before they want their dad to go to the body because they on sometimes it can be misconstrued like we're we're on the same playing field. I'm a guy, you're a guy, and it's not that way because they're still a child. So they would probably want me to discipline them before their dad. They may say different, but I don't know. Going to the body, I think it's a case by case situation. What do you think, man?
Technically, realistically, when it gets to a point where, first of all, even from a child, when children are younger, um, this is my ruling. Um, you never come at a child when you're angry.
Right.
At that point of being really up here, you walk away, pray about it, think about it, and hopefully, ideally, that child, no matter what age, will come to some resolution that, hey, what I did, mommy or daddy is not happy. So I need to kind of revamp. But technically, when it gets to a point of age where a child is of age and of size, of what have you, when it gets to that point where that child is confronting you, then there it's time for some other measures,
Yeah.
some interventions
Mhm.
outside of physical contact. Um, it should never ever get to that point. That's when you reach the level of what we know as abuse, or it gets to that point, because then you're attacking each other. Excuse me, you're attacking each other as equals. And when it gets to that point, a certain age, a certain adolescent maturity, then it's time for some interventions and readjustments in housing,
So I want to address this because
really.
my sis Nat, she is a single mom, and so she's mom and dad in the home, and so her 15-year-old's attitude can be bad sometimes when he takes his tone, and sometimes he can make you step to him. Her older son is disrespectful too, and he's 20. And she goes, it's a problem for her because she does confront her kids off anger. And I think being a single parent, single mom of boys and teenage boys, I can imagine can be um, challenging because you are faced with the task of stepping in um, as the dad and as the mom. And people can, they can shout all day. You can't teach a dude how to be a dude. You can't teach a man how to be a man. But in a situation where you have a single parent and the other parent is not um, present at all in your house or in their own house, and you don't have a village that is comprised of men that would step in and help to raise that child with you, um, then you are put in a position where you're faced with having to be the dad as well. So in that situation, um, what do you do? Like, your daddy at this point. You know, you're stepping in that role because there is no one that has stepped in that role, and not saying not anything like romantic or anything like that, but just somebody in your village that can help in that role with your son, like, and they're getting out of hand their influences and things like that, like how do you deal with that? What you think, Mom?
Again, it's so important to set the ground rules early in life, in your child's life, in your children's life. I was a single parent at one point. Um, and a single parenthood is no different. You know, most women, and I can deal with it from the woman's standpoint. There are some single parent dads as well, but from any standpoint, the ground rules again should be set early on. The earlier you set the ground rules and enforce them by um, consistency, respect, uh, modeling that respect for your children or child, and insisting on that. You know, and it's really it's technically simple. It sounds simple, but the key is consistency.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people tend to, once the child grows uh, older to the point where they're able to uh, conversate with you, we tend to put them in an adult role too soon. We said on yesterday or day before that, oftentimes with media, with social media and outside influences, children quickly get a lot of knowledge, get a lot of information, and oftentimes this information is not appropriate or accurate. So it's even more important as a parent to set the ground rules early on and enforce them, be consistent with those rules. And we said also previous times that um, modeling, you know, you be the example for your child. You be the example. I don't care how old a child gets. First of all, at a certain age where they're approaching adolescence, you're either you're doing one or two things. You're either working or going to school. You're working or going to school. If you're going to school, then you're still, you know, there are rules in my house. There are rules in my house. And when you are not following those rules, you know, what's the, in most games, in most activities, three strikes, you're out. So when you're not following the rules at a certain age and you're in my house, that's when I start to revisit those rules. And if you can't follow them, then you have to go to plan B. Um,
There's a
Again, too
serious.
many parents, single or both parents, are allowing too much um, looseness when it comes to your rules in your household.
Let me go to the
I
comment
don't care how
because
intelligent children are.
we have a very serious comment here. I mean, to me, and I've seen a lot of parents fall into this. Um, where the comment was, I think that my problem was and still is that I've come off as more of a friend than a parent. And I feel like it's too late to try and be more of a parent now, even with my 11-year-old daughter. We're going to address that. And then, hey, Angelique. Angelique says, I try to use loving correction and extend grace so I am more likely to talk, explain, and put in place some sort of consequence that does not include physical punishment. I'm always concerned about physical punishment fostering aggression. If your kid is trying you to a point where you have to consistently put your hands on them, you are clearly playing catch up in the area of training. So let me work backwards. As far as Angelique was saying, so when they get to, for me, just strictly in my house, when they get to a certain age, and I feel like we can talk and they can understand the English language, like I was saying earlier, and I have to keep putting my hands on you. Um, you're right. Something went wrong. Like some tactic and maneuver is not working. Um, when they were younger, there were times where I needed to express the seriousness of the situation. Like yesterday, I spoke about my oldest daughter when she was a young toddler, touching the socket, the light socket, and so um, at that point, because of the seriousness of it, she got her hand spanked, it popped, and it hurt. I know it did. You can see it in her face. But I had to be extreme because the consequence was extreme. And so, because we weren't at a place yet where we could sit down and have a conversation, um, because of the necessity to get her away from that socket, or get her to understand that's a no no, I popped her hands. And after I popped her hand, and moved her away simultaneously, um, my repetitive speech to her was, no, you do not touch this. You do not touch this. You see this? No touch. And I would be like, you're going to get your hands popped. And I made it clear. And so, as I was saying yesterday, people who were in our village knew, like, we could be at someone else's house and we're walking and she's still talking and she walked all the way around. And they're like, what is she doing? I'm like, oh, this is a socket. And so as she got older, um, the way I discipline transition. Again, depending on the seriousness of the situation, um, yeah, she got her butt whooped. Um, but I never spank my children without explanation, before or after. Um, I've never done that, and that is still my tactic today. Like, I'm always explaining why. Um, why it is that you're going to be punished, why it is that you've gotten this spanking, um, because it's not just about control. It's about the fact that I've been given a charge to rear my children in a certain way, and so once I gain the control, then I put them back on the right path. Like, I have to snatch you up out of there because you done got off the path, and then I have to put you back on. And in order to do that, it's me explaining to you why. But like I said yesterday, sometimes in that moment, I don't have time to say, okay, don't do this because it could be a life or death situation. So I'm correcting, and then the explanation may come. You wanted to say something?
I when I was a child and I was growing up in my home,
Hey, Mary.
and I've said this before, I'll reiterate the fact that the the greater the foundation, the less you have children deviating from that foundation. What is happening in our society now is again, there are too many other outside influences. There and because of parents' work schedules, they're not with their children as often as they would want to be, and therefore children take on the role of, in a single household, the girls generally over the role of friendship with mom or dad. The boys tend to take over the role of uh, I'm the man of the house.
Mm-hmm.
Again, rules have to be set early on, and I totally agree with Angelique that um, when you lay that foundation and you are consistent in following it, then the less confrontations, you'll see less and less confrontations. My dad, um, as I said on yesterday previously, that um, my dad and my mom had to say little. At one point I thought they were, uh, non-speaking parents because they never had to really. I never remember my dad raising his voice. My mom didn't really raise her voice, but she was, like I said, she was the fire in the home. Um, so, and I know for a fact, even as an adult, because of the foundations that were laid early on and the consistency and the respect on both parts, there was less that my parents had to do in terms of any certainly physical punishments. When it gets to that point again, physical, that's where today in today's society it gets too close to becoming abusive. Okay, and I strongly suggest even in whether it's a single parent family or two parents that um, we should not focus on being our children's friend, but being our children's uh, parent. You have to maintain the parent role. And that doesn't mean, ruling with the iron glove. But, and I will say this, yes, control, yes, there must be control, but make certain that you understand what control is. Control is not necessarily being violent, definitely not being violent. And it's not being, mean, despiteful, uh, and and certainly not driving your children to wrath. Okay, and that's a topic in itself. Parents oftentimes, a lot of times, I've seen this with uh, blended family, with families where, say, there was a single parent, and the parent remarries, and another adult comes into the household. There has to be ground rules. Again, that's another whole show in itself. But ground rules as far as those adults are concerned, as to how we will train our children together, you know. And mothers and fathers have to be vigilant when it comes to another parent
Parent.
or any outside
Yeah.
adults who want to intervene in your structured home. So, and I see the time has gotten to the point where there's just not enough hours in the day. I tell you, I certainly appreciate all the comments, and I am today able to read some of the comments. Net Parker and Angelique, I really appreciate hearing you guys, and Mr. Castro, and
He need a whooping.
this has really been great.
It
Yes,
has,
and
and
I see your cat is attentive
I
too.
I think it's necessary to for this topic to come up again because in a society that we're in,
It
I
feeds
do
into
I do understand like that the children today are faced with a lot, and so this was something I'm gonna end with this on my end. Something that I implemented in my household. It may work for you, it may not. But I do experience sometimes with a few of my one out of the six, their tone, and so all the time I don't feel like they think that it's disrespectful. So what we've implemented in my house, and it took a minute for Dad to get on board, but then he understood. Um, but I implemented a journal, and so I allowed them to write down if anything happened throughout the day, to write down their thoughts, however they came out, what they wanted to say, and then they would turn it in at the end of the night. It could be addressed to myself, it could be addressed to Dad or both of us, um, and we would read it if necessary. Both of us would read it, and and have the meeting of the minds and then respond. And if it deemed a verbal response, like face to face, then we would have that put in place so that we could talk to them about it. And so initially, Dad was like, "No, that's giving them the opportunity to be disrespectful. What if they get on there like, you make me effing blah 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 blah." And so the thing was, I was that confident in our parenting with them that they wouldn't be that crazy. They wouldn't be delusional. However, if we did receive something like that written down, that would be a red light for me, that, or a red flag rather, for me, that there's a deeper situation and they really don't know that that's disrespectful. And then that would let me know that, okay, so we need to do some more meeting of the minds and some more communication to let them know what is respectful and what is not, and how they can effectively express themselves. Because ultimately, I'm sending these young humans out into the world at some point. And so beyond what they do in our household, beyond how they respect mom and dad, that is their first expression of how they're going to deal with society. And so if we don't get a handle on that, then as they become adults, where I can't, like, the cops don't have to call me first, I need them to know how to communicate effectively. And so, as Cuz was saying, Angelique was saying, like, trying to steer away from the physical portion of sparing the rod, um, and more so trying to adopt the whole let's talk this out. Um, as they get older, I'm finding myself finding new tactics and maneuvers to get to them. And we have six, and even down to the baby who's 18 months old. I have to deal with her and discipline her differently than I'm disciplining my 14 and 16-year old. And then even with the 14 and 16-year old, I have to discipline them differently because there's a boy and a girl. And so their outlook on things are different. And, just because both of them are teenagers doesn't mean they're going to think the same, they're going to act the same. And I think that, like you were saying, like, in your household where you got different age ranges and then different sexes, like you have a boy, you have a girl, the way you deal with them sometimes has to be different. It has to be individualized because of the person. Everybody learns different. We learned that in school. So in your household, which is the first schoolhouse, you have to understand that they all learn differently. They all comprehend differently. And so your tactics and maneuvers have to be specific to that particular child. Um, and then not being angry. That's something that I try to make sure that I'm not. Like, I remember my mom saying, "You know what? You need to walk away from me right now." And I get it now because it's like I'm human too. So certain things that they may do, I may get upset, and I don't want to respond in my disciplinary action upset. I want to have a clear head and a clear mind, because this is not the plantation, like Angie was saying yesterday. This isn't the plantation. I'm not whipping you like a slave. And so, if I have a moment to calm myself, then the disciplinary action may even change and shift to something different. And now I'm going in there, closing the door, like, yo, what's the problem? Because I can see clearly, and I see it's much deeper than her just stomping down the hall. Something's wrong. So, as I close out my side, please say yes, Mr. Castro does. Yeah, he does need a spanking van. That's the one person in this world that needs a spanking. That's Mr. Castro, even at almost 40 years old. But I
And
love him.
I'd like to also emphasize. I'd like to also emphasize how important it is. And one of our viewers mentioned, we have good kids. I have good kids. I think, it's sometimes on the parents' part, the kids see this lack of seriousness, and it's okay to ease up sometimes, but you got to know when to roll and know when to fold. And the thing is, too, um, You mentioned tone. Tone is so important. I am a stickler for tone. In all of my years of teaching and instructing, um, my children knew, my pupils knew they could say anything in the world to me, but you have to know how to say it, the
Yeah.
right tone.
And
And this is something that I'm noticing with children nowadays as well. I have some uh, um, children, who talk loud and they just automatically, you learn the antics of your children. But however, you're training all along. You're training them as you go along. Sometimes, your tone or your loudness can be mistaken for insolence or uh, being dominating, particularly when you're talking with an adult. Respect is so very important, and that's something I'm seeing in today's children that um, is kind of a concern to me because they feel they are equal with their parents early on, you know, and not so, and they lose that respect aspect early on, and that's not a good thing. So respect, training, laying the foundation first and foremost. Um, as you said, and the time just doesn't give us the opportunity to share everything or as much as we have here. But as we go along, I'm certain we will sort of double back because a lot of topics kind of intertwine.
yeah.
It's been really great. I've enjoyed, and I'm
Me
looking
too. And I'm
forward
looking at my
to
mama like I'm glad I don't
even
have no video
more.
conferences because this morning tea is 7:30 in the morning. I'm trying to figure out how she looks so fly at 7:30 in the morning. I'm like, what? Like we said, we all home working from
Oh,
home. Like
I
what's
woke up. I
happening?
wake up like I wake up like this.
I had look. I had to step up my
Yeah,
game. I
good.
had
I
on a
wish
tank
you could.
yesterday. I felt,
But but again, for you ladies and men out there, um, you know, it's how you present yourself to yourself.
mm-hmm.
I wake up with every day, even after retirement,
She wake up
I
like
dress for
every
success,
day.
you
She
know.
really woke up like
But your success may not be my
she
success.
probably got dressed
However,
last
it
night
makes
before she
me
went
feel
to
good.
sleep.
Make yourself feel good. You're special.
Love
You're
you, Nat
important.
girl. You know we
You
did it.
matter.
Look, tell the babies that your village extends to all the way over here in Temple Hills. Tell them we don't be playing. We got you.
Yeah, but
But it's been
as
a
I said,
pleasure.
looking at
Happy
the
Good
time, I know
Friday,
we're running
guys.
over.
Happy Good Friday.
Happy
Um,
Friday.
Happy
Happy,
resurrection to all of you all. Um,
yeah,
Hopefully, um,
yes.
with given the situation, your eyes are really open to what's going on in the world and give praise what praise is due this weekend. Um, Love you.
We need more of this.
We do. And so look,
Mwah.
off the
Love
record,
you.
we don't have to have this right here, girl. All you gotta do is text me. I'm look, shoot my number, DM you. All you gotta do is text Auntie La, ask Van. So but we will see you guys back bright and early on Monday. We'll have a very interesting topic. I'm not going to let the cat out the bag yet. We'll have a very interesting topic. So be on the lookout Sunday night around 10-ish at night to find out what the topic will be for Monday. It's been awesome. It's been amazing hanging with you guys this week. Y'all are off the chain, man. Like, y'all are off the chain.
And,
So I've been wanting to put
and
this
bring your
together.
friends. Invite your
Yeah,
friends.
tell them come through. Tell them get their tea or coffee or whatever they put in the mug at 7:30 in the morning.
Yes,
That,
absolutely. And
don't-
everybody, remember to your church is within you. Find a church somewhere on YouTube or wherever. But above all, just remember that we're in this thing together and we're going to make it. We're going to get out of it and we're going to come out a new person.
that's the key.
God bless every one of you. Happy Resurrection Weekend. I love you.
Thank you too. It's your girl Lahla-Hadiya, neo soul R&B recording artist with Morning Tea with Mommy. Hope you guys had an amazing time, and we'll see you again the same time on Monday. Happy Resurrection!